Welcome to another episode of What Else You Got with Mitch and Margot. I'm Mitch. What else you got?
Hey Mitch, I have a question for you.
I
Oh,
might have an answer.
forgot to forgot to take my glasses off. My question for you today is, what do you wish more people would talk about more openly with each other?
There's a ton of different things. First thought was emotions, which I have thoughts on that. And then the second one that popped in my head was finances.
Ooh, why finances?
Because no one talks about it. It's you got money? Yeah, sure. I only got $5. Oh, you want to go to a $20 movie? I guess I can. It's just one of those that just have the discussion on. Yeah, I make X amount. I can only afford X and Y and Z. I can show like I make
Okay.
more, but there's that, and then there's also the discussion with your significant other of we got $20 to make it through the rest of the month, and you
Okay,
want to buy a
that's
pair of shoes.
that's really interesting that you wish people would more openly talk about finances because wow, that actually covers a huge vast area because we could talk about billionaires versus the other end of the spectrum, people who are barely scraping by to put food on their table. We could talk about how people dating do or do not discuss finances before getting married. We could talk about the uncomfortable conversation of finances when people get divorced, or the uncomfortable conversation of finances between friends. Just like you said, somebody wants to go to a movie and to a dinner, and the other person is counting how many quarters they've got in their pocket. It's awkward. So, do we normalize talking about money, or do we switch to a form of society where there is no money?
Yeah, and it's just one of those that because when you mention billionaires, everyone thinks the billionaire has a secret that he doesn't want to share, and honestly, a lot of them tell their secret. It's just no one understands the secret that's being told, and it really just comes down to really basic practices. But because someone has one philosophy of money, they're holding their cards close to their chest, they go, "That can't be it," because I'm doing the same thing, but they must have had a cheat card that I don't know about. And it's just one of those that it's not as hidden, masked as what some people think. And especially if we make it more normalized, it's just one of those that everyone can have these discussions and we can understand how money actually works versus the I hold my cards, you don't know how much I've got, and I'm trying to guess what you've got.
Well, and you mentioned a cheat card. Sometimes that cheat card, which people don't like to talk about either, is the concept of generational wealth. I have known multiple people who talk about how hard they work to get where they are today, but actually, they had a lot of hand ups from their family who already had wealth or connections or both. And so, if you've got two people who are trying to achieve the same goal, but person A comes from zero generational wealth, just barely scraping by to put food on the table, no social or business connections. And then you've got person B who comes from generational wealth, which often comes with significant community connections, business connections, and whatnot. They both end up at, just for um, discussion's sake, say Harvard, but this person came in on a scholarship, and this person may have come in on a scholarship too, but it was because of, I forget the term, when you've got people in your family who've gone to a school.
Oh, something alumni.
Yeah, it's something more than alumni, but anyhow, they might get a scholarship just because generations of their family have gone there. So you can say they're both there on scholarships, but they're completely different in actuality. They're in different situations. And so they can both be in the same degree program, but this person over here is working a 40-hour job in order to have the extra money to be able to stay at Harvard, to pay for their food or pay for their books or whatever that's not included in the scholarship, where this person doesn't have to spend the extra time or energy working extra job. And if they are working an extra job, it might be a fluff job that was handed to them. And so you can say these two people are traveling the same path, but they're really not. There's so many socioeconomical factors at play. And then when this person over here gets a foot in the door at a bigger, fancier firm because of family connections, and this person ends up at a lower type of firm, and then this person has exponential growth and then becomes a gajillionaire, and this person over here is doing better than their parents were doing, but still has to budget and coupon and buy the less expensive shoes. This person up here could say, well, they just didn't work as hard as I did. I achieved all of this. So I think that's one of the reasons why people don't want to openly talk about money, because we're not just talking about dollars and cents in the bank. We're talking about socioeconomical impact. We're talking about generational wealth. We're talking about um, taboo topics that people don't want to talk about. So there are cheat cards, and um, there are tips and tricks that people who come from generational wealth know how to protect their money and know how to make it grow faster. Where somebody over here who is so busy worrying about food safety and shelter, they don't know the benefits of an LLC company or putting money in an S corp. They don't know all the tips and tricks to make their money grow, because they're using every penny just to feed their children.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of different things, and you briefly touched on it where, um, it, of course, we're mirrored, so it's I don't know which hand was which. The person who worked harder, you basically said that uh, they improved upon where their parents were, and in reality, that there is an achievement, and it's one of those that as long as you are able to increase your station in some form, you're doing great. Uh, the people who go down in station, there's a different discussion for that, and the people who stay in their high station, there's a different discussion for that. But it really just comes down to: are you putting in a fair effort?
Right. And so if you've got two people who are, and I mean, who's to judge what a fair effort is, but if you've got two people who are putting in the exact same effort, if there were a way to objectively measure it, the exact same number of hours at work each week, doing the exact same work, then why should this person struggle to feed their family and this person is going on trips 4 times a year to Europe and Asia and other interesting places?
Yeah. One of my goals when I'm rich, I don't really care about the famous side of things, is to be able to create businesses and jobs that I can share my wealth with. And of course, it's one of those that if people just look at my face net value, they're going to go, well, he's got a butt ton of cash. Well, in reality, I'm trying to funnel as much of my cash out to help other people come up. But that's my goal when I'm rich. And like I said, the famous part, yeah, we'll see what happens. So,
Wow.
mirroring the topic back to you, what are some things that you wish would be more openly discussed?
Well, I don't feel like we finished talking about the money thing. Did you feel like we
Oh,
finished talking about the money thing? Why else do you think that people struggle to talk about finances publicly?
appearance.
Tell me more.
It's basically one of those kind of like what we started with, where the friend goes to the movies and they can barely make it. It's one of those that everyone, or at least in, I don't want to say everyone, and I can't say holistically the U.S., but one of the problems in the U.S. is credit card debt. Why is there such high credit card debt? Because people want to look like other people. Why do they want to look like other people? They want to have the appearance that they are doing better off than they are. When I'm going to pull one of the Dave Ramsey things, if you live where you're supposed to, you don't take on credit card debt, you live in your means, you will be able to exceed where you wanted to have the appearance because you don't have debt pulling you down and having to pay 20% interest on everything because you want to look like you're rich.
So, do you think people in the United States have trouble talking about financial matters openly because we are a capitalistic society?
I wouldn't quite say capitalistic. I would say it's the fear and shame of looking less.
I wonder, I mentioned generational wealth, but I wonder if some of this is generational. You hear people talk about generational trauma, generational emotional messaging type things. If you think about how our country was formed with so many people coming, well, even to this day, people still come to the United States of America hoping for something better, hoping for that American dream, hoping to overcome and achieve something. I wonder if it is embedded in our generational, not trauma, but our generational DNA that we are in the United States of America. We should be achieving more than generations past. We should be achieving financial wealth. We should be able to work harder, be stronger, do better, do more. And if we don't have more than the Joneses, then we must be a failure. Therefore, we better go get a credit card so that we can make sure our social media accounts look just as good as the neighbors do.
And there's two really interesting points that you brought up. You talked about social media, how it looks like, and keeping up with the Joneses. And it really is just one of those. And also, you brought up how in the US we must be achieving more than previous generations. And in reality, all of that is true. We just don't think it is because we see a very, very narrow viewpoint on everything. There is a couple people on social media that very much highlight the difference between basically boomer and millennial cost differences of cost of living, and how a lot of older people say, well, why do you have 12 TVs? In my day, we only had one TV. But one of the things I like in the video is it highlights the difference between a TV back in the day, it was a 2 month salary. A TV today is a 2 day salary. And so it's one of those that the value of the items have shifted, but the mindset of the value of the item has not. And so it's one of those that someone says, why are you wasting your funds on this? The other person goes, because I can't afford this thing that you think is basic, like a house. To me, the house is a TV where it costs much more than this, as a TV for me is a house for you. It's one of those that the measurements don't align. And so it's just one of those that, yes, we are achieving more, but like we talked about in a different podcast, the bar has changed. The measurements aren't the same. Where something that seems super basic for one generation may be completely foreign and unreal for another, because it's one of those that uh, internet for one generation they have no clue, another generation they have no clue about how to fix shoes. It sounds really weird. One generation goes, yeah, it's really easy to fix a shoe. The other generation goes, I know where to buy a shoe. And so it's just one of those that there are generational differences. And if you are looking at the dollar value, yes, we've improved. If you're looking at the skill set and mindset value, it depends on where you're at.
Well, and you talked about differences in measurement. I think that also is another thing that leads to appearances, also, because you could have a person who buys all of their items at a thrift store, that they're a great thrift store shopper, and they could be wearing all brand name things, but maybe he or she bought those items at a thrift store, but you could pop, stand them next to somebody else who's wearing the exact same outfit, but they went to the mall and paid full price for everything. They both look the same, but one of them thrifted those items and the other one paid full price. I know I love certain brand name shoes, and I have learned how to get those shoes on sale. So whether it's waiting till the end of the season when they're marking them all down on clearance prices so they have space to bring in the new shoes, or finding certain outlets on the internet, I love certain brands of shoes, and I allow myself to enjoy those shoes knowing that I'm getting them at the best price possible. Um, so again, it's conceptions, misconceptions, measurements, and perspectives. And I remember when I showed my maternal grandmother my engagement ring. I was so proud to show her my engagement ring, and bless her heart, I love her very much. She was an amazing woman. First words out of her mouth were, "Oh, that's beautiful. I hope you never have to pawn it." Because she came from the depression generation. Her family, I mean, she was an amazing woman. She did so much to take care of her family. For a while they had to, she was the sole supporter of her family, and for a while they had to live in a tent. And she would make money to put food on the table, or lack thereof, by going and taking pieces off of their vehicle outside and going and selling those pieces and parts off of the vehicle. So she basically cannibalized their automobile in order to get food to feed her children. And so she that's a pretty clear example of somebody who came from nothing. I mean, that's a visual right there. And then she lived such an amazing life. I've told you previously how she was an amazing businesswoman. Um, she when she passed away, she had multi millions. But to look at her, you would not have known that because she always lived a humble, generous life. She never wanted anybody to feel like they had less than or that they were less than.
Yeah, and that's really a really awesome mindset of everyone's equal, because technically we're all equal. It just happens to be we measure too much of how equal someone is based off of what how many digits they have in their bank account. When in reality, we're all human. We all exist. We're all doing our best, or at least in theory, we're doing our best. Um, and going back to kind of we were talking about thrift store and how someone knows how to get different items for different prices. One of the things that is very much a lost art that is phenomenal if you can find someone who's willing to do it. Bartering. You might be able to get something for $5, but someone values it for $100, which means you could get something that's maybe priced tag $100 for someone else, but it cost them $10. And so it's really you get these phenomenal deals if you know how to trade different resources, because you know how to get a resource that someone else wants at a price that benefits you.
Well, and bartering is not only an amazing skill, but it's also great for our environment, if you would think about it. Thrifting is great for the environment too. I read somewhere, and so don't quote me because I'm sure this is not an accurate statistic, but I read somewhere about how many tons of clothing end up in landfills because when clothing is returned to a store, sometimes they cannot resell it, and so it just gets thrown in the trash. When clothing doesn't sell at the end of the season and they don't need to get rid of it, it goes in the trash. So much clothing is in landfills. If we were better at bartering or sharing or hand me downs or giveaways, it would really help not clog up the landfills, you know? And so, I have a friend who loves to get things off of Facebook Marketplace, which is a coordinated bartering system. Um, and she's just determined to not buy things brand new. And so she's very good at it. She finds great finds there. And I just think there's a lot to be said for that. We are such a consumer-based society, and we consume. It would be nice for us to, I think we talked about this in a previous podcast, use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just on the note of stores getting rid of clothes, There are some stores, outlet stores, or places like Ross and Goodwill and these other places uh, that first tier stores will basically sell at a discounted rate to these other stores. And at that point, it's the exact same item. It just happens to be sold at a lower price at a different store, but it's the exact same item. And so it really just comes down to know where, like you're talking about your shoes, know where to get them at the best price. And they're the same product. It's just what's the better way of approaching it. And kind of going back to what we started with is some people, they know these cheat cards to be able to get things at better prices, when the secret really is just know where to get the item and how to get it. And one thing that is dangerous if you don't know how to use it correctly is credit cards. If you get 2% back, yeah, it's 2%, but that's in theory 2% that you didn't spend. But I'm not advocating for credit cards, but it's one of those that if you know how to use your tools correctly, you are able to maximize the dollar. Because I'm a big fan of HSA, so health savings account. It's for your high deductible insurance plans. Those are phenomenal because you put in pre-tax dollars and you get post-tax value out of it. And so I just because the way I do math in my head, not saying I'm actually in that tax bracket. Uncle Sam gets a third, but if Uncle Sam doesn't get a third and you get to put that third into your HSA, you got 50% more. Has 30% equal 50%? That's because of just how you're doing the fractions, but it really just comes down to uh, knowing how to get more out of your dollar. There's plenty of tricks to do it, and if you're able to leverage it, you're able to do better, whether that's through tax advantage, tax credit, tax whatever, or discounts, coupons, insert all kinds of other ideas. There are ways to maximize the dollar or reduce the cost, one of the two.
Yeah. Yes. And the bottom basic line math formula is if you're struggling paycheck to paycheck, you've got two choices. You can either reduce your expenses or increase your income. And by doing either and or both of those things, you will eventually see better results and take the time to learn the tricks, read books, take classes, do every, I talk about going to a therapist to increase my emotional IQ. If you're struggling financially, take a class, increase your financial knowledge, increase your ability to manage your personal finances, learn the tricks, find people who are managing their money the way you wish you could and ask them for resources and go out there and learn how to make your money work for you more efficiently.
Yeah, a $20 book might be multi millions for you at the end. $100 class might turn into billions at the end. $1,000 college course might be the difference of life and death. It really just comes down to the knowledge is worth it. The key is will you apply it once you're done achieving, collecting,
Assimilating the
ingesting?
knowledge,
Yeah,
and taking action. You Yes, we could just sit here and complain about how Joe Schmo over there has millions of dollars more than we do, or we could take action and do something to improve our own lives. A small, tiny little example of me taking action: when I first moved into my apartment a year and a half ago, I was really caught by surprise at how high the heating bill was over the winter. I had moved in at the end of July. And so when I had set up my electricity account, I had asked them, what should I budget per month for my electricity? And so they told electricity company told me what the average had been for the last 3 months. Well, still, those were summer months. And so I did not know going into the winter months how much it was going to cost for me to heat my apartment. It's not a huge apartment, but the windows are not sealed well. There's a lot of there's it's very drafty. And I live right on the water, and so it's colder right where I am. And so I heated my apartment to a point where I was comfortable. And then got the first bill and I was shocked, but I didn't want to be cold. And so my wheels started spinning. What I could do about it. I know you and I actually talked about it, and you suggested getting a space heater rather than heating the entire space. Just heat the space right in front of me. And so the time passed, and the weather started to change, and I was like, okay, I've got to make a decision. I need to take an action. Either I'm going to once again spend too much on my electricity bill this coming winter, or I need to do something different. And so I looked more into space heaters, and then I looked into electric blankets. I had never actually owned one for myself before. And so I was looking at the reviews of electric blankets, and I thought, you know what? I think I like that idea. So for the amount of money I could spend on two electric blankets, one for my bed and one for my recliner, I thought I will come out so much ahead if I'm not heating the entire apartment. And so now it's worked out. I'm so proud of myself. It's worked out like a charm. So I can sit in my recliner and watch a show and be totally warm and cozy in my fuzzy electric blanket. Total bliss. And I'm not using the heat in the apartment. And so my bill is significantly lower. I've already earned back the price of those two electric blankets. And the one on my bed, I plug it in about 30 minutes before I'm ready to go to bed. And so then when I climb into that bed, it is already warm. It is, I'm telling you, it's heaven.
Yeah, and I really like that example just because some other options is ceramic space heaters, which they're great if you need to heat up a space thoroughly for a short period of time, and then you're okay with it. And then you can go, and those are usually the cheaper ones. Then you can go up to infrared, which is a little bit more pricey, a little bit more efficient, and then you can go up to like oil radiator heaters, where you put in a lot of energy really up front, but the idea is you want all day warmth and different price tiers, different scenarios, different needs, but you at the end of the day you're trying to trade off heat the entire place and pay a large bill, or heat enough space and be happy. And there's things all the way from you can spend lots of money on getting the Cadillac of cars, or you can go buy the used car down the lot, and all you need is to get to work. Great. You can travel in comfort, or you can have comfort in your bank account. There's a bunch of different ways to approach it, and it really just comes down to there. If you don't like one scenario, you can always trade for another one. Because one thing that I actually did, I guess it was almost a year ago, I had a really nice truck. I sold my truck because I wanted to try funding a business. The business, it's loosely profitable, but it's also just one of those that I'm still trying to figure out how to get it to work. And so I traded a vehicle for potential future securities.
Yeah, I love it. And I love the concept of taking action. So, whether we're talking about money or talking about so many other topics, a person can sit and wallow in their frustration, their discomfort, their shame, whatever, their jealousy. They could just sit there and wallow and complain. Or they could get up and take an action, even if the action is just scooting across the room, just scooting a little bit out of the place that you've been stuck in. Any form of action is a good thing. And it can lead to so much more positive momentum in your life. And we can achieve goals we never imagined possible just a step at a time.
And that goes to the idea of opportunity cost. People don't realize time or timing has a cost to it because one example is people are waiting to time the stock market so they can buy it at the right time. They may spend 3 years waiting for it to time just right. But if you just go in with the exact same amount, yeah, you might take losses the first year. But by acting on the opportunity and putting in the same amount of effort, you can travel ahead and be exponentially ahead. And so 5 minutes might not seem like a lot. 5 weeks might seem not like a lot. Waiting 5 years turns into quite a bit pretty quickly. And it really just comes down to how much does waiting cost you money? You might say it doesn't cost me anything by not doing anything, but if you do the math out for what you could have gained, that's how much it cost you.
Yes. Yes. Opportunity cost is a huge thing, and I totally agree. Well, that turned into a pretty interesting conversation. You got anything else on that topic?
I think that's it for this one.
That was a good one. That was unexpected. Interesting. Okay,
Always
well,
fun.
we want to thank everybody for listening to us today. And, came back, this whole conversation about money and finances came from the question of what's something you wish people would talk more openly about. So if you've got a topic that answers that question, put it in the comments, shoot us a message, click the like button, and follow us. And we will see you at the next episode of What Else You Got with Mitch and Margot. See ya.